Hello and welcome to Cup of Cosmology, the place for all your questions about the universe. My name is Diana Hooper. Let's try that again. My name is Diana Hooper. I'm a postdoctoral researcher currently at the University of Helsinki over in Finland, and I study cosmology. So that means that I study the universe, the contents of the universe, how everything evolves, how everything interacts, basically all of the cool things happening inside the universe. I love studying cosmology, I love being a scientist, and I really enjoy chatting to people about all of the cool things that I get to study. That is what Cup of Cosmology is here for. It's a place where you can ask anything you want about space, about science, about cosmology, about academia, if you want me to start a rant, and I will try to answer any questions you all have. Hey, David Dunn, great to see you. James, great to see you as well. Always the regulars in here. So thank you for that message, David. So yeah, it's an interesting day. So Cup of Cosmology has now turned 7 years old today. So before I get into that, as always, I forget to do the YouTube stuff. If please do like this video, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, leave a comment, do all of the YouTube things just to increase the viewership and audience. That's how we build up the community, right? Hey Scott, great to see you as always. Glad you could join today. So yeah, great to see people coming in. Hopefully some viewers on Twitter as well. You know, as always, if you want to join the conversation, you should head over to YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, directly underneath the video, you should find a tweet or a reply tweet with the link to the YouTube one where you can join in the conversation. But wherever you're watching from, welcome to Cup of Cosmology. It's great to have you here. So it's very strange to me that I am now 7 years into Cup of Cosmology. So this actually started on a completely random idea 7 years ago. And here we are, 3 platforms later, 3 countries later in my case as well. And it's been a long journey. And yet somehow we're still here. We're still having these conversations, which is ridiculous to me, especially as some of you have been following me for over 6 years now. I was sure at some point people would stop wanting to hear me ramble about cosmology, and yet somehow people keep coming back. So thank you to everyone who's joined me for 7. If you've been here for 7 years, if you've been here for 7 minutes, welcome. It's really great to have everyone here. You people, you audience, are the reason why Cup of Cosmology has been going on for 7 years. So I don't really have a topic today. I'm happy to just ramble. So as always, ask anything you want and I will try to answer. But in the meantime, I just want to give you a bit of a backstory of Cup of Cosmology. And you can find most of this on the webpage, like cupofcosmology.com. That's where you can find everything you want to know, including the rules and the guidelines. So let's rewind to August 2015. I was about to start my master's thesis. So I was a master's student about to start my master's thesis, which seems like a long time ago. And I randomly downloaded an app called Periscope, which was very much not my usual app. It's a social media type thing where you could just watch people doing live videos. So I downloaded that and I was just on Periscope pressing the random button just to see what would happen. And I was finding a lot of things that weren't interesting to me. But then I pressed a random button at some point and stumbled across a stream by Ian McLaughlin, neuroscientist, with the title, I'm a neuroscientist, let's talk about the brain. And I watched that stream and realized that this was a great medium for science communication. Like just watching all of the people, well, thanks for joining, David. It was nice of you to pop by for the beginning of the stream. So I saw all of these people asking questions and Ian was giving great explanations. And I realized that this is really a good format to chat to people. Because a lot of people, I think, have never had the chance to chat to a scientist and ask questions. It's always difficult to pin a scientist down and ask them questions. So then I had the idea that it could be nice to start a cosmology live stream. Now, one of the main motivations was, as I was just saying, some people just don't have the chance to ask their questions. So I wanted to have a place where people could just come and talk to a scientist. And the purpose of this live stream when I initially set it up was to demystify science, because people think that science is this big, confusing, mysterious concept. But science is understandable. Science is fun. And this is what I want to convey to people, that science is not just for some crazy scientist locked in an ivory tower. Science is for everyone. So demystify science, bring people closer to scientists. And also I wanted to break the image of the traditional scientist. Because if you picture a scientist, you probably picture an old white man in a lab coat, probably an eccentric genius, a lone genius whose personality is questionable and who's probably lashing out at everyone around them, but it's forgivable because they're a genius. Everything about this stereotype is wrong. That is what I hope to one of the other things I hope to convey with Cup of Cosmology. You know, scientists come from every walk of life. Scientists look very, very different. You will not find two scientists alike. And at the end of the day, we're not these crazy, unapproachable geniuses. We are just normal people who happen to have the luck, the privilege to be studying science. But we are not these sci-fi unapproachable geniuses, although some people like to think they are, but that is not the mainstream scientist. So yeah, August 2015, I decided to start Cup of Cosmology. Now at the time, the show didn't have a name. I did have a blog that was called Cup of Cosmology, where I was putting a lot of thoughts about the show, but the show itself didn't have a name. Like, for years, it was just like, welcome to my show, to my channel. And I didn't actually realize that I should give it a name until very recently. So Cup of Cosmology turned 7 years is not strictly speaking correct. The live stream turned 7 years, but I only gave it the official name and the logo and all of this quite recently. So yeah, I started in August. My first live stream was not actually the 28th of August, it was the 30th of August 2015. So almost exactly 7 years ago. I couldn't do it exactly 7 years because the 30th is a Tuesday and I can't do a stream on a Tuesday. So it is almost exactly 7 years since I did the first stream. And at the beginning, obviously nobody knew who I was, what I was doing. And it was slow. The first few days were slow. And I would prepare a topic, go way in detail, speak too quickly. Anyone who remembers me from the first days of Periscope will remember that I spoke really fast. Now I'm actually a lot slower than what I used to be. I make an effort to not speak too fast anymore. The first few episodes, I did like a history of the universe. It was a 2-hour stream. I did the common questions, like your 25 most common questions in cosmology. That was a 2.5-hour stream because I was really bad at planning 1-hour streams. Did a whole special on general relativity. Like my fourth stream was a 1.5-hour special on general relativity. It was intense. There was a bit too much math thrown in. And I realized that I was making things too technical. So it's been a learning experience. But then a couple of weeks in, people started tuning in, and people were tuning in every week. I was doing a show every week at the same time, and people were tuning in. And I realized that people actually really like to chat about cosmology, and people really enjoyed listening to the random stuff I was rambling about on my live streams. Yes, Scott, you were one of the first ones. I don't think you were there right at the beginning, but definitely not more than a few months in. So, Scott, I think you've been around you're one of the people who's been around the longest. I also think James, I'm not sure if James is still in the room. I remember James being there also in the very, very early days. So I know some of you, my regulars, my core following, have been there for a long time, and yet he's still come in. So yeah, Cup of Cosmology, or the first live stream started, my first live stream started in August 2015. And about a year in, I realized that, people were really having fun with this. I was really enjoying it. It helped me improve my communication skills. It helped me understand what I was working on. It somewhat helped me get over my fear of public talking, although not completely. And I'll be honest with you all, every time I do a live stream, even 7 years later, I am shaking before I press the go live button. Like, my hands are very slightly shaky. And every time before I click the go live button, I need to take a deep breath and steady myself because I do not like speaking in public. And yet here I am broadcasting myself to the world and pretending that everything is calm and controlled and not at all scary. It's a skill. This is one of the reasons I was speaking so fast in the early days, I believe. It was a way of like protecting. It was some weird defense mechanism, but over that now mostly. So yeah, about a year in, I realized that apart from, just me, too much coffee, yet I don't think I can blame the caffeine because I'm still drinking coffee, less than I used to, but I'm still drinking coffee. No, I think it was just in general, I just used to speak a lot faster than I do now. So at some point I realized that apart from me rambling, a good idea would be to get guests joining on the show. So I asked a couple of people in the office to join me on my own stream on Periscope. people in the office joined in. So then suddenly we had 2 scientists, some weeks 3 scientists. And after a few months of this, so by now we're talking November 2016, I realized that I could actually do 2 shows. And I set up a second account. Some of the older fans here, fans, God, I hate that word, fans. Older viewers here, the viewers who've been around for 7 years might remember that back in 2016, end of 2016, I set up a second Periscope channel for the TTK Institute, the Institute for Theoretical Particle Physics and Cosmology, institute with the ridiculously long name. That is where I did my master's and my PhD. So at this point, a couple months into my PhD, I just started my PhD, I set up a channel for the Institute. And then I had 2 weekly live streams, my own on Sundays, because Sunday has been the one, this live stream on a Sunday has basically been the constant since I started. It's always been a Sunday. There's been a few diversions, but it's pretty much always been a Sunday for me. And then I had another one going every Wednesday at the Institute, where I had people joining me from the Institute, and it was great because it just really allowed me to show off different voices, different scientists, different work being done at the Institute. But it was also a lot of work because every week I had to find somebody to be on the stream, I had to prepare, I had to set it up, and then do the whole thing again on Sunday. And I realized it was becoming a lot. And it gradually meant that the episodes stopped being as weekly, and sometimes there were gaps here and then, and a few times where I dropped out because it was just too much doing 2 live streams a week during my PhD. But both channels kept going throughout my PhD, my own channel and the TTK channel over in Aachen in Germany. And it was a lot of stuff, but it was so much fun. Then I finished my PhD and left Aachen. The TTK streams continued for about 2 months, 2-3 months after I left the Institute, and then they stopped. So the TTK live streams did not outlive me for long. But Cup of Cosmology continued every Sunday for a while. And then end of 2019, I realized moving country and all that, it gradually became harder for me to stream. In 2020, everyone had a lot going on in 2020. The live streams kind of stopped. They kind of slowed down. So 2020, I think I did 6 or 7 live streams in the entire year. It was still going on, but there were some months where there was a big gap. And honestly, I missed it because I loved doing these live streams. But there was a gap. So I wouldn't really say Cup of Cosmology has been weekly, but there have been some months where there was a gap. And then we got the news at the end of 2020 that Periscope was closing down. The moment they announced that Periscope was closing down, I hope my timeline is right here. This was 2020, right? Yes. Periscope announced that it was closing down in March 21. So it announced this in December, basically gave us 3 months warning. And I'll be completely honest, when Periscope announced that it was going to close down, I almost stopped my live streams. I decided at that point, this is a sign from the universe that it's time to pack up Cup of Cosmology. It's time to stop. And I was very nearly ready to stop. And then I got a message from the other scientists who had been doing their own science shows on Periscope, including Ian, the person who got me to live stream in the very first place, telling me about a new place called HAPS. HAPS, where apparently you could do lots of cool things. So then I went to HAPS and I watched a live stream, and you could bring images up on screen. You could invite guests up with you. You could put things on the screen. It was everything I'd ever wanted in my live stream, and it was very, very easy to use. And when I was poking about looking at HAPS, they had a challenge. Go live 8 weeks consecutively and you get $50 or something like that. I like a challenge. So I started the HAPS challenge. This is a good chance to kickstart Cup of Cosmology again, go back to weekly live streams. And I started there on HAPS in January 21. Started on HAPS. Fell in love with the platform, fell in love with the community. It was an amazing place. And that got me back into live streaming every week. And then throughout 2021, I was back to almost weekly live streams. It was a fun time. HAPS was really fun. We had the HAPS challenges, which we had random topics, and we had to try to do streams about these specific topics, which was great fun. I remember doing a water challenge where I talked about where in the solar system we can find water. I did HAPS Olympics challenge, which is still one of my favorite episodes of Cup of Cosmology ever, which was actually just about a year ago now, where we hosted a planet Olympics. So not 8 planets plus Pluto competed in a series of games. Some were scientific, some were which planet has the best weather, voted for by the public. It was my favorite live stream. It is up on the YouTube channel. If you haven't yet watched the Planet Olympics, I really encourage you to do so, because it is, in my opinion, my best stream. It was so fun. It was so interactive. And HAPS just brought that really nice community feeling to the live streams. Then November 21, the HAPS platform changed. They pulled the old version, put out a new version. A lot of people were not happy with this. It was a big setback because I could no longer share videos, I could no longer share images, I couldn't schedule the streams in advance. So it did very much deplete. It started the downward spiral of HAPS, and at that point it was just a downhill trajectory. And then not too long ago, HAPS announced that it was closing down definitively. But at this point, Cup of Cosmology had been around for quite a while. I'd already done the name and the branding. I have the nice logo, which, in case you haven't seen it, this is my Cup of Cosmology logo with so many Easter eggs, and I think people have found all Easter eggs by now. So I had the name, I had the web page, I had the logo. I wasn't going to stop Cup of Cosmology just because HAPS was shutting down. And then inevitably, I ended up at the place where I always knew I was heading, which was YouTube. In hindsight, if I just started on YouTube 7 years ago, it would have been a lot easier. But that's not the journey I took. And now here we are, back to almost weekly live streams. Not completely weekly, but almost weekly live streams. So Periscope for 5 years, Periscope for 6 years, HAPS for 1 year, and now settling on YouTube, but still using Restream, so as you can see by the logo up here, using Restream so that I can go out to Twitter, because a lot of my followers do just watch from Twitter. So 7 years later, 3 platform changes, from Periscope to HAPS to YouTube and Restream. I tried Twitch for a while, didn't work for me. So here we are. And I have numbers, because I went and dug up the numbers because I was curious how many streams I've actually done. So I have with a tiny bit of uncertainty, because I might have misremembered or miscalculated some things. In the Periscope days, on my own account in Periscope, I did 146 live streams, which is a ridiculous amount of live streams. I had scopes on my calendar every week. That was very nice. Yeah, I do remember seeing your username, Gentleman Ghost, already in the Periscope days. I know you were definitely in the TTK streams. Hey, Doe, great to see you. Didn't know you were around here. Really nice to see you, Doe. Another one from the HAPS community. Doe's a great friend from HAPS. I was talking just now about HAPS and the great community on HAPS. So yeah, on Periscope, I had 146 streams on my own account, plus around 80 on the TTK account. I don't have the exact number for the TTK one, but it was around 80 that I was involved in on TTK. I did 53 live streams on HAPS about cosmology. I also did a couple of random ones, like here's a sunset, because everyone on HAPS likes sunsets. And I've now done 10 on Restream since the change of platform. So if you put that all together on my own account, that is 209 live streams. And if I count in the TTK ones, that is 289 live streams over 7 years. I am ridiculously proud of that, because I never expected this to happen. The first time I went live, I thought, maybe 2-3 people will watch. We'll see how it goes. 289. This is my 290th live stream on cosmology. Plus minus a few. There might be some uncertainty there. But yeah, 7 years later, I think it was on Periscope. Periscope counted with the hearts. I think I had like 2.5 million hearts on Periscope. I love that people could just tap the screen and you'd see hearts coming up. It was really nice. But I don't have a view count for Periscope, but I know I had like 2.5 million hearts. On HAPS, I had 150,000 views in the 1 year that I was on HAPS, which is nice. And now here we are on YouTube. My YouTube account should have just reached 150 subscribers. If you haven't yet subscribed to YouTube, please do so. I'm still rebuilding after moving platform again from HAPS. 289 streams, approximately 7 years. And, I still love it. I still love chatting to people about science, about space, about all of the cool things happening in the universe. I have learned so much on Cup of Cosmology. I have learned how to explain things, hopefully in a semi-decent way. I've also had the chance to bring on incredible guests, people who I never thought I would have on the show, like people who I'd looked up to for years, and then I messaged like, hey, do you want to be on the show? And they joined on the show. And I've had all of your questions, all of your interactions, people sending me messages, people reaching out to me. It's so nice to just see that, so many of you come back to listen to Cup of Cosmology every week. And what also never ceases to amaze me is the fact that people actually like giving me money for Cup of Cosmology sometimes. If you're one of the people who want to do that, you can find a link here, Ko-fi.com/DCHooper91. And somehow people keep giving me random cups of coffee and stuff, which is great because it pays the cost of maintaining the webpage and running the show. So I do appreciate that. But Cup of Cosmology will always be free, and you will never have to pay to come and listen to me ramble about all cool things happening in the universe. I'm not sure how good the sound cancellation is here, so I'm not sure if you can hear, but I have a huge thunderstorm going on currently. There's thunder outside, which is pretty cool. And we had torrential rain a while ago. 290 streams in 7 years over 364 weeks is just under 80%. Well, I think it's enough streams considering everything that's been happening in the last 7 years. 3 countries, a PhD, and yeah, when I started the streams, I was still a master's student, so I was going to finish my master's, got my PhD, did a postdoc in Belgium, moved to Finland, and yet and there was a global pandemic. And I managed 290 streams and still 0 cosmetology streams. That is still true. Yes, I have not yet had a cosmetologist on the stream. I could someday, maybe on April Fool, someday I'll just do a cosmetology stream and start with like, here's my makeup advice, because obviously I wear makeup. I think I have not worn makeup in like 12 years. Teenage me liked makeup. Oh no, 12. Oh. I realized I was not a teenager 12 years ago. Wow, how am I so old? Yes, just suddenly realized I'm old, relatively speaking. So yeah, maybe some point, just as a laugh, I'll do a cosmetology stream. It would be very amusing. It could be fun, actually. That could be a laugh. Maybe I could do a cosplay stream and just like go full on cosplay stream, cosmology while dressed as an anime character. Yeah, Scott, grading your success in life is difficult, right? Because success is relative. Success is personal. What is successful for you is not successful for others. I don't think measuring or grading your success is ever productive. Everyone is doing what they can. We're all just trying to navigate this crazy thing called life, right? And we all just do what we can. During your job interviews, do you mention creating this live stream and its success? I don't mention it directly in the interviews unless it comes up, but I have mentioned it in my applications because for me, outreach is a very important part of being a scientist. And I think it's an important part to convey. So I always try to find a way to slip it into my applications, like, hey, I also do this. And when I've had interviews, I do normally ask the questions like, what outreach does the university do? Because I do this and would love to carry on doing this. Now, overall, the people I speak to in the field are happy with what I'm doing. A lot of people think it's great. There have been some people who think that, I'm wasting my time looking for internet clouds instead of being a real scientist, which is nonsense because part of science is talking to people about science. My salary comes from taxpayers' money. So the least I could do is tell you what I'm working on. So a lot of people are happy with it. I know everyone at my current university is really encouraging of what I'm doing. Last week I had my current supervisor on the stream, so that tells you. And I also had my PhD advisor on the stream, I think 3 times. And the first one was scripted and it was so bad, and I'm never doing a scripted stream again. We actually scripted half of it and it did not work. All of my streams have been spontaneous and improvised, except one where I scripted it and it was so bad. So never scripting things again. But yeah, overall, I found that people are very supportive and encouraging of Cup of Cosmology, which is great. And now I'm getting people at my new university to join, which is really fun. So it's always nice to get more people involved. And yeah, overall, people do like it. But it is something I do try to slip into applications and job interviews. So currently, I'm writing grant applications, which I would not wish on anyone. It is not fun. I'm basically writing documents saying, can you give me money to do science? But somehow I need to stretch it out for at least 10 pages, sometimes 20 pages. Like, here's 20 pages of justification as to why you should give me money to do research. And of course, I am very slightly annoyed about my grant applications. But I am slipping in there as well that I set up Cup of Cosmology. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have learned anything new. It's very, very nice to hear, Scott. I do hope I've been able to at least give you one or two tidbits of knowledge occasionally, in amongst all the rambling and the ranting and the off-topic conversations I go down sometimes. I do hope that I've been able to teach people some things. Hey, Hamza, great to see you here as well. Haven't seen you in the YouTube chat for a while. It's great to see you as well. So, yeah, it's definitely, I feel like it's definitely been a journey to get to where Cup of Cosmology is today. Perhaps closing down was a big blow to me, to be honest, because it gutted my following. That's why I'm still trying to build it up here on YouTube again. If you haven't subscribed yet, find the subscribe button. And you finally learned about blue dwarfs. You did, Scott. So back in the early days, I believe when I was still in my PhD, so still in Aachen for sure, Scott asked me about blue dwarfs and I promised to look into it. And I never did. And several years later, at some point, it was just out just to keep the bit going, where I was refusing to look into blue dwarfs, and Scott would ask me about it every week. But then I got an expert on stellar evolution on the stream, and she talked about blue dwarfs. So you can no longer ask me about blue dwarfs because we've already covered that, finally. I think that's probably the question that I've dragged out the longest on the stream. So yeah, the blue dwarfs was solved eventually. So, Cup of Cosmology, 7 years on, still having fun, still enjoying myself, still learning so much from the guests, from the audience. And sometimes people send me questions that send me down a rabbit hole of trying to figure stuff out, which is really cool. And one really nice thing that came from Cup of Cosmology, a couple months ago in May, I gave a public lecture at the Munich Observatory. Now, giving a public outreach talk at an observatory is something I wanted to do since I was a kid. Since I went to an observatory and heard someone talking about science, I wanted to be the person at the observatory talking about science. And back in spring this year, I was messaged by the people at the Munich Observatory saying that, they'd seen that I was in Munich for an unrelated conference, and as I was there, could I go speak at the observatory? And it was so much fun. And when I was there, I realized that they'd heard about me through Cup of Cosmology. So apparently the director of the observatory was just watching cosmology videos on YouTube, and YouTube proposed my channel. And then he watched all of my show, all of the episodes on YouTube, and saw that and then a few days later saw my name on the list of participants in Munich and was like, hey, this is Cup of Cosmology person. So Cup of Cosmology is what got me the invite to present at the Munich Observatory, which crossed something off of my bucket list. So that was super fun. And I will be giving another talk at an observatory in January. Yeah, the Periscope days did have the thing that the viewership was just higher all around than in any other platform. And some days there was a constant flux of questions, like a constant flow of questions. And it also, in the early days of Periscope, questions would disappear. You couldn't scroll back. The scroll back feature they added later on. So questions were coming so quickly in Periscope that I would write some down, I would answer some, but I couldn't keep up with all the questions. We had to choose which ones, which was much easier when we had other people. Of course, it had the other side that it meant that I rarely had to prepare topics. You could just turn on Periscope and there would be hundreds of questions. Now, since the Periscope days, I do actually normally prepare a topic because I know that the questions here just aren't as intense as they were, or not flowing as quickly as they were on Periscope, which is why most days I do prepare a topic. Today I'm just kind of rambling. I'm really happy that I'm 7 years into Cup of Cosmology. What started off as a random, let's see if anyone wants to listen to me, has become a really important part of my career as a scientist. And I'm really happy with Cup of Cosmology. It's not going away anytime soon. You know, I now even have my YouTube banner. I have the trailer, which, by the way, I'm really happy with because I taught myself video editing skills just to make the trailer for the channel. If you haven't seen the trailer, please do find the trailer on my YouTube channel because I put a lot of work into that. I taught myself how to video edit, and I got someone to write music for the trailer, and I'm so happy with that trailer. It's like, it was actually one of my New Year resolutions. I don't like New Year resolutions, but I had a couple of New Year resolutions, and one of them was learn how to edit videos. And by the end of January, I put out the trailer, so it took me 1 month to learn how to edit videos to the level that I could make a trailer. And it was like, I'm done for the year. You know, I don't need to do anything else. I've crossed off one thing. Obviously, yeah, but that made me happy. So yeah, Cup of Cosmology is not going anywhere anytime soon. We have the logo, we have the banner, we have the trailer with music, have the whole branding now. And I have been asked at some point if I would set up a merch store so you can get mugs and t-shirts with the Cup of Cosmology logo and banner. I am thinking about that. I'm not sure how much interest there would be. I'm not sure if anyone would buy stuff. But if you're interested in getting Cup of Cosmology merch, let me know, because I could be very easily convinced into setting up a merch store. Just leaving that there in case anyone wants to ask for a merch store. Okay, so I've been rambling for 32 minutes about the show and the history of the show, and you know, it's great to just reflect on the journey, on where I started, where we've been, where we're going. But there's also a couple of things I do want to talk about once I can find the things that I want to share. So there's been some pretty cool stuff happening in terms of science, in terms of cosmology lately. You could sell broken coffee mugs that reassemble themselves. That is definitely callback. That's and one of my first analogies, talking about the arrow of time and how if you drop a coffee mug, it will not spontaneously assemble itself. Okay, so there were a few other things that I wanted to talk about. So people might be aware of the fact that we have an incredible telescope. Did you post anywhere the Easter eggs in your logo? I did not, no. The people who found the Easter eggs know that they found the Easter eggs, so you can message me saying, I think this is one of the Easter eggs, and I'll tell you if you're correct or not. There are a few people who have found all of the Easter eggs in the logo. I think Scott and Paul were the first ones to find the remaining Easter eggs in the logo. As for the banner image, there is one Easter egg that nobody has found. And there is a cat that needs to be identified that so far only Scott has been able to identify. So figure out what cat is in the banner, figure out the hidden thing in the banner that I don't think anyone has noticed yet. And yeah, and I think in the logo, pretty much everything is known by now, with the exception of 2 Easter eggs that are left there for people to guess. And those, some people are guessing. Okay, so we currently have an amazing telescope doing amazing science. This telescope is the JWST. For reasons that I've gone into a lot of times before, I will not use the telescope's full name because I do not believe in naming telescopes after somebody who was proven to be a homophobe, and therefore excluding queer people like myself from space, from physics, from science. But in general, ignoring this thing that I will always complain about, the JWST, the Just Wonderful Space Telescope, is doing some amazing science. It launched on Christmas Day last year. There were so many things that could have gone wrong with this telescope, and so far everything has just gone perfectly. The telescope deployed without, it launched without problems, it deployed without problems, operations started without problems. It is an incredible feat of ingenuity that we have this telescope and that it is working, and it is producing amazing, amazing images. It's really, really cool to think we got the first images from the telescope only 6 weeks ago, and we've already learned so much, and it already feels like these images is just commonplace now, but we learned so much from them. So I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this one. This is my favorite JWST image. This is the Carina Nebula, the cosmic cliffs, as they're called, the Carina Nebula. And you can really just see here all of the amazing structure we can pick out with JWST. So JWST is an infrared telescope, which means instead of looking in the visible range of the electromagnetic spectrum, it's looking in the infrared range. This infrared means it can basically peer through the dust. If you look at this image from Hubble, you don't get as many stars, you don't get as much structure because you just pick up the dust. But with JWST, you can actually peer through the dust. Apart from giving us pretty pictures, we're actually doing really cool science with the telescope. But last week, we got my favorite image today. Like, I thought this one, the cosmic cliffs, was my favorite image. Last week, they released a photo of Jupiter as taken by the JWST in infrared. And we've all seen photos of Jupiter, the big red spot, you know, the lines, the clouds, the auroras on Jupiter. It's spectacular. But Jupiter in infrared is a whole other thing. This is Jupiter in infrared as seen by the JWST. I've stared at this image so many times and it is so pretty. It's incredible to think that this is a gas planet in our solar system. We built this incredible telescope that is taking these images. Now, I do want to add a comment here that this is not true color. Now, because JWST is looking in infrared, the things it picks up don't actually look the way they look here, because it's in infrared, so it doesn't actually have like visible colors. But then what people do is they color it in accordingly. So the colors here are not the true colors as imaged by JWST. It's just a reconstruction of shifting the wavelength slightly. And what this image shows us, you can see there's kind of this orange blob at the top and at the bottom, this orange haze. And these are auroras. These are the northern lights and southern lights that we can see on Jupiter. So this is something we know that happens here on Earth when you basically have solar flares, you have energy coming from the sun, it hits the magnetic field in the Earth, the particles travel across the magnetic field in the Earth's atmosphere, and they end up producing this amazing green, purple light show that I have never been able to see in person, and I am very much looking forward to seeing that someday. I moved to Finland. I want to see Northern Lights. It needs to happen. I've been here almost a year and it still hasn't happened. But in fairness, I know there are people who have been here their whole lives and have never seen them. Digression there. This image of Jupiter is incredible. It's so pretty. And we can see the Northern Light, the Southern Lights, the auroras here. And apart from being a really pretty image, this is helping us understand a lot of what is happening on the planet, a lot of the planet's atmosphere and the conditions there. Yeah, NASA lies to us about the colors of its images, but if you go to this image on their webpage, it does tell you that it's false color. So they're not directly lying to you because they do say this is a false color image. As long as you go to the webpage and check. I just realized I can put myself side by side instead of being in the bottom. So as long as you go to the webpage and check, you can actually find the disclaimer that it's a false color image. Completely unrelated, I noticed in the replay of last week's stream that my video comes in and out of focus frequently. Is this something that people notice? Is this something that bothers people? Because I technically have a camera specifically for live streaming, and it keeps trying to focus on the picture behind me instead of me. And I notice, now that I'm aware of it, it bothers me, and I'm not sure if this is just me that's aware of it, or if anyone else is aware of it. Now that I pointed it out, it's going to bother everyone else as well, unfortunately. So, just a few comments here from James. I personally would love a weekly scope from every field of science. Yeah, it would be amazing, right, if we could get more scientists doing these weekly streams. So there are still some doing weekly streams. David Dunn still does the astronomy show. I'm not sure how frequently, but David Dunn on Twitch, astronomy show. Isa Betterberg is still doing the bug scope over on Twitch. I think that's most Thursdays. So there are still a few people doing it. Georgia and Christian have the Humans and Wildlife show on Wednesdays, but it's not every Wednesday. So there are some people doing it, but it would be amazing to have like a whole schedule of tune in this week, this time for your weekly geology session. It would be really cool. I'm glad these scopes, these streams have taught you stuff, James. That is the point of these. I'm really glad that people learn things. I've had people message me sometimes like, "Hey, I learned this random fact on your stream, and it makes me so happy." Or some people will send me random news stories about cosmology, like, "I saw this, and it made me think of you," and I love it. It really makes me happy when people see something about space and understand it because of my streams, or think of me because space, and people know I love space. So if in any way you've learned stuff from the streams, anytime someone sends me a message about a positive message about Cup of Cosmology, I screenshot it and I have a folder where I save all of these things. So it really does mean a lot to me when people enjoy the show. I noticed that a few weeks ago, we didn't want to point it out. Yeah, the camera coming in and out of focus. It's the same camera I've been using now for 2 years, but I think it's gotten worse. So yeah, I think it has gotten worse. I'm not really sure. I think at some point I'm just going to buy another camera that doesn't have autofocus, because I haven't figured out how to turn this one's autofocus off. And when it's focusing on me, it's fine, but sometimes it decides the painting is more important. Of course, I could just have a white background like I used to. Maybe it didn't get worse. I just put the picture up and now I notice it. Also, if I move my hands, it gets worse, which is bad because I move my hands a lot. Tangents again. Is this a trick? Did you put DM in the logo or ask us to find it? I'm not going to say no to that, but also that's not the Easter egg you're supposed to find, but that is what a lot of people said. Like, did you just put dark matter everywhere and then ask us to find it? If you do find dark matter, tell me, because it will help me with my job. Yeah, moving back and forth makes it worse. Now, the problem is I'm incapable of staying still when I do a live stream. Also, when talking in general, like my hands are going crazy, I'm moving. I cannot sit still and talk, except when I'm on the phone. I know a lot of people on the phone will walk around. When I'm on the phone, I'm perfectly still on the sofa. But if I'm in an actual conversation with someone, you're going to get me moving. Back and forth is what causes it to refocus. Yeah, it's basically when it doesn't know the focal distance, so it tries to adjust. But I noticed it a lot last week, and now it's bothering me. And now that it's bothering me, I'll probably change the camera or go back to the actual inbuilt laptop one, which is also not so bad. So anyway, I didn't mean to maximize that, just meant to bring it on screen. Here we go. So we have this amazing photo of Jupiter by the JWST, which is helping us understand what's happening inside the atmosphere of the planet. But there is a new result from a few days ago from the same telescope, which I think is really, really, really cool. So one of the missions of the JWST is to study exoplanets. Now, exoplanets are planets that are beyond the solar system. Anything that's a planet that is not in the solar system, we call an exoplanet. We have found over 3,000 exoplanets thanks to telescopes like Kepler and TESS. This is incredible. We know of at least 3,000 planets out there that are not part of the solar system. And one of the ways we can try to learn about distant planets, or even find distant planets, is what we call the transit method. So if you have a light and something moves in front of the light, you receive less light from the light source. Right? If you're staring at the moon, for an example, and a bird flies in front of the moon, for a few seconds you get less light because something is blocking some of the light. Now, you can do the same to try to find planets moving around a star. You have a star here and a planet moving around it. At some point, the planet is going to go in front of the star. If you're on the right line of sight, you're going to get the star and the planet. When the planet moves in front of the star, you're going to receive less overall light coming from the star. This means that you have what we call a transit. If something moves in front of the star once, hey David, welcome back. If something moves in front of the star once, it might be something passing by. But if every 28 days something moves in front of the star, then you have something orbiting. And this is how we try to find planets. Let me just, a few more comments. I think there's a delay between the comments being sent on YouTube and the comments reaching me here. So could they just put any color to each point, or is there a rationale? So I'm guessing you're talking about the false color on Jupiter. There is a rationale. I can't remember what it is, but there is a rationale. I think it's explained if you go to isaweb.com/images. You can find all of them, and there's an explanation of how they do the shifting. So there is a justification for it. It's not just these are random colors that look pretty. There is actually a justification for it, but I cannot remember what it is. We can find 3,000 exoplanets, but not Planet 9. Yeah, the problem is Planet 9 is not going in between us and the sun, which means we can't use the transit method. It's also so small compared to everything else around it that it's quite difficult for us to measure. Now, most of the exoplanets we found are either hot giants or big, massive, rocky planets. Planet 9, if it exists, is a tiny, tiny little thing. It's very difficult to find. But as I was saying, one of the ways we can find planets is by seeing something traveling in front of the star. This is going to diminish the amount of light you receive. Did they ever figure out what was causing the irregular fluctuations in Betelgeuse or Tabby's star? Blue was shorter infrared, red was longer infrared. Yes, this makes sense. So David here is saying that blue was shorter infrared, red was longer infrared. So they basically just take the infrared spectrum and shift it to a visible spectrum. So they just basically shifted the whole thing slightly. So they take the actual wavelength that you measure and just shift it into a visible spectrum to give it the false colors. So to answer your question, Scott, Tabby's star was interesting. Now, Tabby's star is a star that we will be able to measure where there was something causing less light to reach us from the star. So something passed in front of the star. And this something was not like anything we'd ever seen before. And it could have been a lot of things. And the scientists made an offhand flippant comment of, we can't even rule out the possibility of it being an alien megastructure. Now, the scientist was basically saying there are 1,000 possibilities, including that, and we're still ruling things out. What the media did is jump on the phrase of alien megastructure, and the next day the headlines were full of scientists says there's an alien megastructure around Tabby's star. And then, of course, it kind of snowballed from there. Now, it is still a bit of a mystery, but to the best of our knowledge, it seems to have been a cloud of basically an asteroid that got disintegrated at some point, or a comet that fell apart at some point. So it's just this cloud of rock particles and dust moving in front of the star. So I think it's still not completely clear that this is what it is, but this is the most likely candidate. And no scientist actually believes that it's an alien megastructure unless there were scientists writing a book and trying to sell it to you. And then they'll not going to go there. As for Betelgeuse, I believe it was Betelgeuse basically just burped. So Betelgeuse is a star that at some point might go supernova. People got excited, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, time is weird, recently, because the light around Betelgeuse was doing something strange and it looked like it might be building up to go supernova, but it didn't. And I think the answer was the star basically just had a random fluctuation. So yeah. Betelgeuse had a massive coronal mass ejection. Yeah, so the surface of the star basically just burped out, had the equivalent of a solar flare, just a huge ejection. That messed up prior images, and everyone thought it would go supernova, and it didn't. So Betelgeuse hasn't gone supernova yet, at least not based on our observations. Of course, it might be that Betelgeuse has already exploded. It just takes a long time for the light to reach us. But currently, as we see it, Betelgeuse has not yet exploded. But I was saying, we have this transit method. Now, one cool thing about the transit method is when the planet just starts to pass in front of the star is going to send its light through the planet's atmosphere. So what you can then do is use what we call spectroscopy to measure what is inside the planet's atmosphere. And this is really, really cool. So you take the light that's traveling through this atmosphere there. So you have the planet, it has its atmosphere around it, travels in front of the star. As it just starts to pass in front of the star sends light through its atmosphere. If you can trace this, if you can pick this up, you can do a spectroscopy or spectral decomposition. So when light passes through any medium, like the atmosphere of the atmosphere of a planet, a lot of photons are going to get absorbed and emitted at different wavelengths, depending on the chemical composition. For an example, there's one cool way you can see this. You can hold up a prism in front of a flame and put different chemicals on the flame to make it, the thing you throw on fire to make it go purple. You can do that and put a prism in front of it. And when you get the rainbow, there will be black marks. The black marks correspond to the chemicals that are passing, that the light is traveling through, absorbing the photons, so photons of that specific wavelength don't reach you. So you take the light coming through the atmosphere of a distant planet. You take the spectral decomposition. What you're going to get is the typical rainbow with a few black lines, and the black lines tell you what elements are in the atmosphere. But this is very, very, very difficult to do because a lot of the light passing through the atmosphere gets absorbed. However, infrared light can travel through the atmosphere of most exoplanets and most planets, which means if you have a damn good infrared telescope, a pretty good infrared telescope that's captured a transit, you could actually try to do this to understand the composition of the star, of the planet. I keep saying the wrong thing, of the planet. And that is exactly what the JWST has done. So this is one of the science objectives of the JWST, is to study exoplanets and figure out what is in their surface, what is in their atmosphere. And now we actually have the first data point of this. So what you can see here is the light curve, or the amount of light that is blocked during this transit. So you have the wavelength of light at the bottom on the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis is how much light is blocked based on the components that you have, right? So based on what's in the atmosphere, you're going to block different amounts of light. So what you can see here, every white dot corresponds to the data, and the blue line is the best curve we have to reproduce the data. And this peak that you can see here, this big peak at a wavelength of around 4.2 microns, is exactly what we would expect if the atmosphere is made up mainly of CO2, carbon dioxide. So JWST has been able to take the spectral decomposition of the atmosphere of an exoplanet and found that this planet has a lot of carbon dioxide in it, which is really, really, really cool when you think about it. We built this amazing telescope, we sent it to space. It has looked at a planet that is very far away, within our solar system, but far away. Sorry, not within the solar system, within the Milky Way. Not within the solar system. It's a planet within the Milky Way, very far away. And this telescope has been able to tell us this planet has an atmosphere that is mostly carbon dioxide. This is really cool. Now, just to comment, this planet is a massive giant. It's traveling around its sun, its star. I think it takes 4 days to go around the star once. So it is very much not an Earth-like planet. It would be scorching hot gas, not an actual physical surface you could land on. So it's very much not an Earth-like planet. But we now have the composition of the atmosphere of an exoplanet in the Milky Way, thanks to JWST. And this is an excellent proof of principle, because we've done it with this one, which has the weird name WASP-39b, I think it is, because it was the WASP experiment that first found it, and 39b because it's the second one from the star. So the star is always A, and then the planets go from B downwards. So this is a great proof of principle that we can actually study, yes, WASP-39b. So we very much can study the atmosphere of planets, and this is great because we've used it on this planet now. But we know this is not an Earth-like planet. But we can also use this on other exoplanets that are potentially Earth-like. We can see if other planets have oxygen, if other planets have liquid water in the atmosphere. So we can really use this to study the composition of planets, which in turn helps us understand the origin of planets and how planets are formed. So this one here, this WASP-39b, has a lot of carbon dioxide. We also know it has a bit of water vapor, a bit of vapor water. It's a hot Saturn without the rings, or maybe it has rings. We don't know if it has rings. It's a hot Saturn-like planet. It has carbon dioxide. It has minimum amounts of monoxide. You can now get the full decomposition. We know what this planet's atmosphere is made of. There's also a very slight anomaly. There's like a slight dip just before the big bump. There's a slight dip that is not statistically significant, but is interesting because this slight dip is not actually explained by any of our current models. So that's cool. So apart from giving us really, really, really pretty images, JWST is doing some amazing science as well. We're studying atmospheres of exoplanets, which is really cool when you think about it. I missed the comment. They are the JWST telescope probes the physics of star formation, Yes. Have I considered switching to astrophysics? Astrophysics is not really my thing. I like talking about astrophysics. I love some of the topics, but I'm committed to early universe physics. It's yeah, I used to think like the CMB was my favorite thing. The CMB is still my favorite thing in the world. CMB is the best thing ever. But gravitational waves, that's where the interesting stuff is happening. CMB is amazing. I will never have anything bad to say about the CMB. And I loved working on the CMB and on dark matter for years, but studying these gravitational waves that are formed by random things that happen in the first picosecond of the universe, well, that is pretty cool. The problem is there's so many cool things in cosmology, and I can't work on all of them. I have to choose what I work on. I'm not sure if we could terraform this planet, this WASP-39b. First, we need to get there. First, we need to know how to actually terraform something. So it might be a while, but I think this one will be way too close to its star to actually be useful to us in any feasible way. Right? It's very hot. It's going around rather fast. From what it seems, it doesn't have a breathable atmosphere. So it is a fun, interesting planet, but probably not one you want to visit anytime soon. So yeah, CMB is cool. You'll never hear me say anything otherwise. The CMB is really, really cool. And we are 56 minutes in, and I have not yet flashed my image. And as we're talking about the CMB being cool, then of course everyone knows what needs to happen. CMB, cosmic microwave background radiation, the oldest light you can see in the universe in any direction you look in the night sky. This is the afterglow of the Big Bang itself. This is the most detailed map of the cosmos ever, and thanks to this map, we understand how much dark energy there is, how much dark matter there is, how old the universe is. We know the universe is flat. CMB, a most amazing thing in the universe, absolutely incredible. And we get this amazing picture of the CMB. Never going to pass up a chance to bring the CMB up on screen. I was very amused last week where we were talking about gravitational waves and physics of the early universe and phase transitions. And we got 7 minutes into the stream and the CMB was already mentioned, and it was not my doing. I was very happy that we got the CMB mentioned last week, 7 minutes in, before even getting too in detail with gravitational waves. Cannot have a stream without the CMB appearing. It's just not allowed. CMB is even in the Cup of Cosmology logo. It's just, yeah. The good thing is, people in the office know that any questions about the CMB, I'm the person to come to, because I will ramble about the CMB for hours, which is fun. I got asked the other day in the office, what's next after Planck? It's like, oh, how long do you have? So Planck is the mission that gave us the image I just showed. And I got asked recently, what's after Planck? It's like, oh, how long do you want to listen to me ramble for? Yeah, CMB. Went off on a topic there, on a tangent, because the CMB was mentioned, and how can I not talk about the CMB? I say the CMB was mentioned as if I wasn't the one who mentioned the CMB. So, almost an hour into the stream, I am getting much better at keeping my streams to 1 hour than in the earlier days. So yeah, 289 streams before, 290th stream today. 7 years after I started Cup of Cosmology, here we are. CMB sees dark matter, but the LHC is totally blind. Yeah, wrong energy scales. Did you watch the Kurzgesagt video on terraforming Venus? Probably yes. I think I've watched almost all Kurzgesagts by now, but some of them I watched years ago, so I keep refining them. Like, oh, I haven't found this one in years, and I'm rewatching it. Kurzgesagt videos are great. I haven't watched the newest one because I wait and watch them with my partner. So currently, because we're long distance, we actually wait and watch them together. So I think I'm missing the latest 2 of Kurzgesagt actually, but I'll catch up on them soon. 290 streams, yeah. So 210 on my own account, counting today, plus about 80 on the TTK account. That was the time when I set up the additional streams for the Institute for Theoretical Particle Physics and Cosmology, the name that does not slip off your tongue easily. So yeah, 290 streams, hundreds of views, thousands of subscribers across the different platforms that have then been lost gradually as I move platform. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. But as always, Cup of Cosmology would not be here without everyone watching, without everyone coming in every week, asking me questions, keeping me going, sending me questions on Twitter, tagging me on Twitter in random science things. this is why the show is still here, because of everyone who's tuned in, because of the audience. So if you've watched any of Cup of Cosmology, if you're here for the first time today, thank you, really thank you, because I did not expect this journey to go so far. I did not expect to be almost 300 streams in, 7 years down the road, still tuning in weekly, still enjoying this, and still finding new topics to talk to people about. It's been emotional. It's been a fun journey. It's been a fun journey, and I don't know how long Cup of Cosmology will continue, but I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. And maybe in a few years, we'll be celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Cup of Cosmology. No idea what country I'll be in then. Hopefully I'll still be here, but we'll see. So thank you, everyone, for keeping Cup of Cosmology going. If you haven't done so, please subscribe, like this video, leave a comment. I'm still rebuilding the audience after HAPS closed down. So please do, subscribe, talk to people about Cup of Cosmology. I'm always happy to have more people come in. As always, if anyone wants to chat to me, you can DM me on Twitter. I don't reply quickly, but I do reply eventually, as long as you keep it friendly. So, and you can also use the Cup of Cosmology webpage. There are instructions on how to request a topic. If there's something about the universe you've always wanted to know and want me to spend an hour talking about it, you can request a topic. The information is on the Cup of Cosmology webpage, cupofcosmology.com. There's a request a topic section, and there you can go ahead, request a topic. There's instructions there. You can also, if there's someone who you think would be amazing on the show, you can message me like, hey, get this person on your show, and I will try to get them on the show. So thank you, everyone, for joining today, for joining for the last 7 years, for keeping this going, for helping me reach 290 streams, for helping me bring science and all of the cool things happening to everyone. I love science. I love being a scientist, and it would not be the same if I couldn't just chat to everyone about all of the cool things I'm doing. So thank you, everyone, for sticking with me for 7 years, and here's to the next 7 years. Cup of Cosmology will be back next Sunday, same time as today. That's 7 p.m. Central European Summertime, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight, 1 p.m. if you're on the East Coast, 10 a.m. if you're on the West Coast. There's a time zone converter on cupofcosmology.com, so you can figure it out in your own time zone. I will be online again next Sunday, and I hope in the meantime you will stay safe and take care of each other.